Have you ever felt as though everything was going perfectly, only to have something pull the ground out from under you, leaving you utterly shaken? That sense of trust you thought was unshakable, that love you believed would last forever, all of it collapsing in mere seconds. It's terrifying to realize that the person you entrusted with all your feelings, your hopes and dreams, could be hiding a secret capable of changing everything. And the worst part, betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's about breaking something much bigger: the friendship, the respect, and, of course, the trust that you both worked so hard to build over the years. In today's video, I'm going to share a real story that shook me to my core, that tested my emotions in every possible way. What happens when the person you love hurts you in a way that feels impossible to forgive? How do you cope with such deep pain, with the overwhelming confusion that prevents you from thinking clearly? Believe me, there's a lesson in this for all of us. And who knows, maybe your perspective on love, on trust, and even on yourself might change after hearing this story. But before we dive in, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content that could transform your life. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to comment below with a mantra. I deserve trust and true love, to attract positive energy and wisdom into your life. In the beginning, our relationship seemed absolutely perfect. You know that feeling when everything just clicks? When everything feels like it's falling into place in the best possible way. That's how I felt. The love I felt for him was immense, and I truly believed that our trust was unbreakable. We shared everything, from the little joys of daily life to our deepest dreams and aspirations. It wasn't just about love, it was about friendship too. He was my best friend, my partner in life, and it was hard to imagine that anything could shake the strong foundation we had built together. I felt safe, wrapped up in this love and trust that seemed indestructible. When you're in a relationship like that, you genuinely believe that nothing can disrupt what you have. The trust we shared between us was, at least from my perspective, the strongest foundation we could have. And honestly, I didn't see any signs that something could be wrong. Life was flowing in perfect harmony, and I never imagined there could be anything hidden, anything that could destroy this entire structure of love, friendship, and trust that we had built over the years. But as they say, sometimes love blinds us to the small things. Things that, in hindsight, make perfect sense. But at the time, I truly believed we were fine. I believed in the strength of what we had and saw no reason to question it. As time went on, though, I started noticing some changes. At first, they were small, almost imperceptible things that could easily be ignored. Little quirks or moments that seemed odd, but not enough to raise any real suspicion. But as days went by, these little things started to pile up, and what had once seemed like simple distractions began to worry me. He seemed more distant, as if his mind was always somewhere else, occupied by things he didn't share with me. Our conversations didn't flow the same way they used to, and those moments of intimacy and friendship, those moments where we would open up to each other and share our feelings, became rarer and rarer. First, I tried to rationalize it. Relationships have phases, right? People go through ups and downs, moments of closeness, and moments of distance. I thought maybe he was going through something, maybe work stress or some personal issue he wasn't ready to talk about yet. After all, even the most open and loving relationships have moments of silence. So I let it go. I trusted that he would come back to me, that whatever distance he was creating would eventually close, and we would be as close as we had always been. But the trust that had once felt rock solid began to waver. He started changing his routine, going out without much explanation, and on some nights he seemed more interested in his phone than in talking to me. And the phone became a critical point. He started getting uncomfortable whenever I got close, always putting it away quickly, as if he had something to hide. This was new behavior, something that had never happened before. And that's when doubt began to creep in. But at the same time, I kept telling myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just a phase, I thought, something temporary. After all, who hasn't gone through ups and downs in a relationship? I chose to believe it was just work stress or everyday fatigue. Feelings of doubt and distrust began to creep in, but I didn't want to feed into them. I tried to convince myself that everything would be okay, that the love we had was still there, strong as ever. But deep down, something didn't feel right. And once you start feeling that trust is slipping, It's hard not to be on edge. It's hard not to question everything. These small things that once seemed harmless began to feel like signs of something much bigger that was on the horizon. And that's what we're going to talk about next. The day everything changed was one of those surreal moments, as if the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. I remember every detail vividly. It wasn't something I expected, despite the signs I had already noticed. It was a regular afternoon, and I was going through some things around the house when I happened to come across a message on his phone. A message that instantly took my breath away. It wasn't from a friend or something that could be interpreted in another way. It was undeniable proof that something very serious was happening. The revelation was a punch to the gut. He was cheating on me. You know when you read something and your heart just stops for a second. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't know how to react. My thoughts were spinning out of control, swirling in a storm of disbelief, anger, and sadness. My mind was desperately searching for an excuse, a reason, anything that would make me believe this wasn't real. But there it was, right in front of me, the truth I had feared. The trust we had, the love we had built, it was all in jeopardy. And in that moment, all the feelings that had once filled me, love, friendship, transformed into pain, anger, and above all a profound sense of disbelief. I kept wondering, how could he do this? How could someone I loved so deeply, someone I trusted for so long, hide something so destructive? The doubts began to pile up, and every detail of that betrayal felt even crueler. And the hardest part was knowing that, no matter how hard I tried to find an explanation, there was no way to justify what he had done. The love I felt was still there, but now mixed with an almost unbearable pain. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the fact that my trust had been shattered, and that, to me, was the worst part. After reading that message, I knew my life would never be the same. And as much as I wanted to run from that reality, there was no way out. Now I had to face the truth no matter how painful it was. The impact of the discovery was devastating. I felt a mix of emotions so intense that, for a few moments, it felt like the world around me had stopped. First came the shock. It was as if reality itself no longer made sense. My heart was pounding, my breathing was heavy, and there was a sense that everything was out of place. How could I possibly process the fact that the man I trusted, the person I had built a life with, had betrayed me in such a brutal way? The pain was physical, as if every cell in my body was feeling the weight of this betrayal. Immediately after the shock, the anger set in. Anger at being deceived, at having trusted someone who ended up hurting me so deeply. And with the anger came questions I couldn't silence. How could he do this to me? Why didn't he tell me sooner? My mind kept spinning in circles, searching for answers that, in that moment, didn't exist. The trust we had, that foundation of love and friendship that supported our relationship, seemed to have been destroyed in an instant. I felt lost, not knowing what to do or how to react. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, to scream, to demand answers. But another part of me wanted to distance myself, to process everything alone, without having to deal with his presence. It was an internal struggle between the need for answers and the fear of facing even more pain. I took a few hours to clear my head, but the truth is, nothing felt right. The confusion was immense, and I didn't know if I was ready to face reality. Those first days were an emotional roller coaster. At times I felt a deep sadness, and at other times I was consumed by anger. I knew I had to do something, that I needed to make a decision, but I wasn't prepared for what was coming next. The love was still there, of course, but now it was mixed with a pain I had never felt before. And the worst part, I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. After a few hours trying to process everything, I knew I couldn't put off the confrontation any longer. It was an inevitable conversation, and the more I delayed it, the more the anguish inside me grew. So I took a deep breath and decided it was time. It wasn't easy to look at him, knowing what I knew, knowing that the trust one valued so deeply had been cruelly broken. Anger and love were tangled up inside me, but I needed answers. I needed to understand what had led him to do this. When I confronted him, he was surprised but quickly tried to justify himself. At first, he denied it, as if in a desperate attempt to save what was left of us. But I already knew the truth, and there was no way he could escape. The confession came shortly after, and each word he said felt like a knife stabbing deeper. He tried to explain, said it wasn't serious, that it was a mistake, but none of it comforted me. On the contrary, each explanation only left me feeling more confused, as though everything we had was an illusion. And then he said something that completely shattered me. He claimed that he had been feeling distant for some time, that something in our relationship had changed, and that this betrayal was, in some twisted way, a way out of the reality he felt trapped in. I didn't know what was worse, the act itself or the fact that instead of talking to me, instead of seeking a solution together, he chose to betray me. The friendship, the respect, the trust, all of it felt like it had been thrown out the window. I listened to his words, but they didn't make any sense to me. How can someone cheat because they feel distant without even trying to fix things? The hurt was consuming me, and no matter how much I wanted to find a solution, a part of me knew that nothing he could say would erase what happened. After the confrontation, I found myself facing a huge dilemma. Should I tell someone about what had happened or keep it to myself? For a long time, our relationship had been an example of love and friendship to those close to us. Our trust inspired others, and I felt that by sharing this betrayal, I would be shattering the image that everyone had of us as a couple. Plus, there was the fear of judgment. I knew that once I told someone, there would be no going back. Eventually, I opened up to my best friend. She had always been there for me through tough times, and I knew that if anyone would understand my feelings, it would be her. When I told her what happened, she was shocked. She hadn't expected something like that to happen in our relationship. After all, we always seemed so united. Her reaction was one of immediate support. She offered me a shoulder to cry on, helped me organize my thoughts, and most importantly, gave me the space to vent and grieve. Sometimes just having someone listen makes all the difference. With my family, the reactions were mixed. Some were understanding, telling me to think about myself and what would be best for my future. Others suggested that perhaps it was a time to consider forgiveness. But deep down, everyone was as confused as I was. Betrayal doesn't just affect the couple. It affects everyone around them. It's as if everyone was dealing with a piece of the pain. And for me, it was difficult to see the people I loved going through that with me. As time went on, doubts about the future of our relationship started to arise. Could I forgive him? Would it be possible to rebuild trust? Or would it be better to move forward, to leave the past behind and try to start anew? These questions weighed on me, and with every conversation with friends and family, I felt even more torn. The days that followed were filled with reflection. I found myself constantly replaying moments from our relationship, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. The love we had, the trust we had built over the years, everything felt so solid, and now it was in pieces. The betrayal made me question not just our relationship but also myself. Should I have noticed something sooner? Did I, in some way, contribute to this distance? These questions haunted me day and night. The internal struggle was immense. Part of me wanted to forgive, to believe that things could go back to the way they were. After all, the love was still there, and it's not easy to walk away from something that had been so important for so long. But at the same time, I knew that forgiving him would mean living with the pain of betrayal, with a constant reminder that trust had been broken. And how do you rebuild something that's been destroyed like that? It was a complicated decision. Forgiveness isn't simple, and it's not always the right path. It needs to be a genuine choice from the heart, and I didn't know if I was ready for that. Slowly, I began to understand that, in order to move forward, I needed to put my feelings in order, to value myself and prioritize my well-being. It was a process of emotional healing that didn't happen overnight. I started reconnecting with myself, finding activities that brought me peace and reflection. I read some books about overcoming and forgiveness, like Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, which helped me understand the importance of embracing vulnerability, and The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which taught me the value of living in the present rather than being stuck in the past. Eventually, I realized that, no matter what choice I made, the most important thing was finding peace with that decision. Trust can be rebuilt, but it will never be the same. And that's okay. Love also changes, just as the way we see friendship and relationships does over time. What matters is that, in the end, I needed to feel whole again, with or without him. If you've ever gone through something similar, I understand what you're feeling. The pain of betrayal can be devastating. The breaking of trust, the sense of loss, and the emotional confusion can make us question everything. Our feelings, the love we once felt, and even our own ability to trust again. But I want you to know that, no matter how difficult it may seem, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter which path you choose, the right decision is always the one that puts you first. Trust is something that builds over time, and its destruction can be devastating. However, overcoming it is also part of the process. Sometimes, forgiveness can be the path. Other times, it can be the beginning of a new journey. The only thing that matters is that, whatever choice you make, it must come from the heart. We need to learn to value ourselves, to understand that true love and friendship begin within us. If you choose to forgive, do it in a way that doesn't hurt you further. If you choose to move on, do it with your head held high, knowing your worth doesn't depend on anyone else. Trust yourself. The healing process can be long and often lonely, but it's there that we find strengths we never knew we had. And remember, you're not alone. Many people go through similar situations, and healing begins when you decide that you deserve happiness, regardless of other people's choices. If you've lived through something like this or know someone who is, share this message. And if you believe that trust, love, and forgiveness are values worth cultivating, please leave a comment. Say what you feel and what you believe is the best path. And remember, your strength is within you. Now tell me, have you ever been through a situation that made you question everything? So, how did you cope with it? Let's talk about it in the comments. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep following stories and reflections like this one. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that life always gives us the chance to reinvent ourselves. And as painful as betrayal can be, it can also be a chance to rediscover who you are and what you really want in life. You don't need to make hasty decisions, but rather reflect deeply on what is best for your heart, for your peace, and for your self-esteem. So I ask you, what will you do with everything you've learned today? Is it time to forgive? Or maybe it's time to move forward and find something that truly fills your life with love and trust. These are questions only you can answer. But whatever your decision, make it consciously, always prioritizing your happiness and well-being. Now, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Please comment below on how this story made you reflect on your own experiences. Let's keep learning, growing, and finding ways to transform our lives for the better. Discovering a secret can completely change our view of a relationship, especially when it involves trust, love, and friendship. In this video, I share a real story of betrayal that left me reeling, and how I coped with the devastating emotions that followed the discovery. We're going to talk about trust, healing, and rebuilding self-esteem after such a painful blow. If you've gone through something similar or are dealing with the pain of betrayal, this video is for you. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with content that can transform your view of love, trust, and relationships. And don't forget to comment on how this story resonated with your own experiences.